Hey everyone, this is Jennifer Beamer, owner-operator of Exploit Diet Art by Science, and today I'm going to talk about how I actually sort through a fleece. So first things first, I have videos about washing fleeces and processing them broken up into steps, and then I've also got a 4-part blog series on both my new blog and my old blog because it was so popular. I wanted to catch people in both locations, and today I kind of wanted to just do a unscripted, let's just show the process type video because as with many things, having more information on the internet that's accessible means that more people can get to it. So hopefully this is going to catch some of my new viewers. So the old content is still good, obviously, but I thought it'd be really good for the algorithm especially to promote this new material and to show with better quality camera what it is that I am doing. So this is my workroom. It's an angle that you probably don't see that often. We've got a lot of things going on here in the background. If you're wondering, that is a coffee roaster. So my partner's a coffee roaster and we'll use that sometimes. So this is our workroom where my stuff is on this side and his stuff is on this side. But we've got this lovely floor space here in front of a window. And that's probably the first important thing, is have really good lighting while you're sorting through your fleece. I like to do mine inside. There are people who prefer to do it outside. So pick a good day, whether it's bright and sunny but not at a rakish angle, so something that's more overhead. So anywhere between 11 and 2 p.m. would be a really good time to do this outside. If you are going to do it outside, make sure that it's a non-windy day because you will be fighting that with your fleece, which is one reason why I like to do it inside. But you just want to make sure that you can see what you're looking at. So if you've got really good overhead lighting inside, right now I've got this beautiful diffuse light coming in from the afternoon sun in my house. And so I'm going to use that to get a good idea of what it is that I bought, because even though who I bought this from, I'll show you. So this comes from Fernhill Fiber, and I reviewed them last year when I bought the fleece. Absolutely beautiful, so good that I've been very reserved in using it, but it is dyed and ready to go. Well, some of it is. I'd like to keep some in reserve because I never know what I want to do with the rest of it. So I've got that fleece, which I'll talk about in a second because I'm going to discuss both of these. And then this one, which is slightly smaller, and I know you can't really see it in the video, but yeah, I didn't really get a chance to fully take them out to look at them, which is something that I hands down always recommend if the shepherd or whoever is selling it will not allow you to fully look at the fleece that you intend to purchase, especially if it's got a higher price tag. I wouldn't go near it just out of the possibility of buying something that is a lemon, so maybe they're hiding something. You really need to get in there, take a deep breath. I know it sounds insane, but use your nose. If it smells a bit off, if it smells a bit gross, if it smells anything other than warm sheep lanolin, probably not going to be a good investment purchase. So because I know this person personally and I've bought from them in the past and they are really well known in the Cotswolds area, I had that buyer's confidence, and so I didn't feel the need to fully take them out to look at them, but I did kind of give them a rummage. And of course Jen at Fernhill Fiber, she's more than happy for you to drag it all out if you really need to take a look. But I was really pressed for time because I was at the Sudbury Yarn Over this year, which was great. Thanks to those of you who came out and have also subsequently given me a follow on my various social media. So yes, I will be talking about these and kind of going over my thought process while I'm doing it. And almost on cue, if you have a pet who likes to get into everything, maybe they should be banished. What do you say? Should we banish you? Because all you're going to do is roll around in it. Yeah. Is that all you're going to do? Yeah, that's all you're going to do. You're just going to roll around in it. So the first fleece that I'm going to be talking about is a Shetland cross, and on the bag it says luster flock. So that's L-U-S-T-R-E, or here in the United States it's L-U-S-T-E-R. So it's making reference to the vibrancy in the shine of the lock. So she's got a mixed batch of animals. So they're a conservation breed. And so they will have mixed characteristics in the fleeces. Every single one is completely unique. And from looking at this one, it definitely has a Shetland lock presence. I mean, just looking at it, it looks very Shetland. I know I will be talking about this in a future Fiber Talk episode, which I keep saying that. I will eventually get to it. But now that I have worked with several of Shetland fleeces, there are some characteristics that are really obvious. So you've got these very crimped locks. Ugh. As I say, I will do some up-close shots to describe what I mean about this being a more Shetland fleece. But given the lock structure, it also has this blue-faced lesser look to it. And I know that she's got a variety of long wools in her mix. I definitely think she has said Wensleydale, and I think Cotswold. But now I'm not exactly sure. And Shetland, obviously. But this one, it has a very strong Shetland look and feel to it, but it's shinier and more silky than any of the other Shetland I have worked with so far, which I've done 3 fleeces of it. 3, maybe 4 fleeces if you count a Hobby Farm clip that I got like a small batch of. So there's that one. Now the second one also says the same thing, but when you look at the fleece, and this one's actually slightly smaller than the first one, this one, it looks very much like a Wensleydale Blueface Leicester mix. And I'm not exactly sure about that because Jen doesn't keep track of all of that really specific information because the animals are kind of left to do their thing. So there's no controlled breeding per se that just happens. And so it's really difficult to know exactly what animal was crossed with which animal. So you kind of just have to guess based on what the actual flock is comprised of predominantly. So those 3 I'm pretty sure are the ones that would comprise these flocks. But this doesn't have any Shetland presentation as far as I can see so far, but based on my experience with Blueface Leicester and my experience with Wensleydale, I feel like it's a really strong bet that we've got the crimp structure from the Blueface Leicester and the very, very shiny, almost like curly bit of the Wensleydale. So sometimes when you're dealing with cross fleeces, it's harder to know what the whole fleece is like. So definitely if you are looking at a cross fleece, even if the shepherd who's selling it to you can tell you exactly which animals were crossed, how they are presented in the fleece might be quite variable. And so it's definitely worth taking a look, especially if you're not familiar with those crosses, just to see how the genetics kind of play out in the fleece. Something else that you're going to want to have handy is a large towel or old blanket or sheet or something to put down on your work surface. If you're using something like linoleum as the underside of your work area, it's probably not going to be a big deal. If you're going to do this outside, like in the grass, you know, just get an old sheet down so that it's not going to pick up any extra vegetable matter or anything like that. I highly recommend using something between your fleece and the floor. I know that it sounds really obvious, but there's lanolin, which is a waxy-like fat that is on the fleece, and it will transfer to other surfaces. So that's part of the reason why I'm dressed the way that I am. A little bit frumpy. I was also doing some home improvement stuff. So you're going to want to lay something like this down to be a barrier between the fleece and your flooring. Even if you're using like hardwood floor, that lanolin could still seep into the flooring and discolor it. So just for safety's sake, if you're doing this inside and you care at all about the flooring, definitely put something down in between the fleece and the floor. The one exception might be linoleum, because it's really easy to clean and, you know, it won't discolor from this. So you want something that is going to be large enough for your fleece so that you can get a really good idea of what it is you're looking at. Now, because I've got two fairly small fleeces, I think it's 1.2 kilos, the other one is 0.9 kilos. So this is a UK full fitted sheet. And so once I get this all nice and set up here on the ground, both fleeces, well, not at the same time, but it will be large enough for both fleeces. Okay, so now you probably have your blanket or towel laid out on the ground like so, and now you have the next bit, which is the unrolling process. So this can be either fun or not so fun. And this is, if this is your first time, it's going to take you longer to lay it all out. But I highly recommend at least seeing if it's been put back together in the way that the animal is formed. So if you have a fleece that is rolled up really nicely, kind of like a blanket, all you do is you unroll it, and then it's usually a trifold, or if they're really large fleeces, it's folded into the middle, and then sometimes the two folded bits are folded on top of each other, so you've got like 4 layers. I don't know if these are going to be rolled. I can't remember what it was like last year. But what you want to do is kind of get the rough shape of the fleece on the towel to look like if you were to lay a sheep out on the ground. So you should have the 4 legs and the 4 corners, roughly where you think the head might be and roughly where you think the bum might be, because that's going to help you if you have a fleece that needs to be further skirted. So sometimes it does happen. I don't anticipate it with this one. And sometimes it helps with, if you're going to divide this fleece into multiple projects, you might want to have the really, really soft stuff earmarked for a different project than the rest of the fleece. So if you take the time to set out the whole fleece and then begin the tidying up process, which I'll show you here in a second, you're going to make your life so much easier doing it now than when you have already washed it. some lovely gray bits in here. So sometimes what I need to do is just look for a spot where it wants to naturally come apart. And it looks like it wants to naturally come apart here. So hopefully you can kind of see that it's wanting to just pull apart here. I think I might bring the camera a little closer. So I've brought the camera a little closer, so hopefully you can see here is where it's wanting to naturally unroll. And it can feel like you're not quite doing it right. And sometimes it happens, but if you end up punching a hole through it like I've just done, it's okay, because the fleece is still somewhat connected with its neighbor flocks, with its neighboring locks. So it should just kind of unroll the rest of the way. See here, it's wanting to unroll. So it sticks a little bit to itself, but you should be able to unroll it fairly easily. Now, there are sometimes parts of the fleece, like this, where you might have some discoloration. Sometimes it's just because of dirt. Sometimes it's because of the way that the shepherd has marked the fleece. I've definitely had blue spots in my fleece. And so don't be completely alarmed if that's something that has come up for you. I might have to move the camera back now so that I have more room to organize this fleece. But I just wanted to see, I wanted you to see how you kind of watch it peel apart in the layers. So usually the tips are all on the inside and the short end is on the outside, so that it's easy to kind of see when you have the kind of the seam, not the seam, but like when the two short ends come up abutted, they should peel away so that you can lay out your whole fleece. As I said, you should be able to find the fleece ends, the head versus the back end. So I'm pretty sure this is the head end, this is the back end. And usually when you have a fleece rolled up, ready for transport like this, you'll have it folded sides to the middle and then rolled the bum end up to the neck end. So the neck will tends to be the softest, the finest, the best for lace garments, anything that needs to be really, really, really soft. So look out for the neck wool. That wool is still fine, it's just the locks aren't as nicely formed as they are up here by the neck. So I'm just gonna fuss with it a little bit to get it to lay flat. So the idea is you want to unwrap the fleece in the reverse order from how it was folded up initially. So I did a really good job of unrolling this for half of it, and then I had that one little hiccup where I think part of the fleece got detached, and I thought in the initial unrolling part I saw it and I thought, oh, it goes like this. Turned out it was the wrong direction, so I had to do 2 twists to undo it, which is fine. But I've got it all organized now. So we've got the bum here. So this will be the right side. This is the left side of the animal, right? That's the right side. And this is the left side. My left arm is sort of like in the middle of the back end of the fleece, and then all the way up here is the neck. Yeah, you can see how the sun has come out. So as I said before, this is the left side of the animal, this is the right side of the animal, this is the center of the back, and you can kind of see how laying out the fleece like this is really helpful, so you understand which bits you might want to use for different projects, but also it gets you a sense of how clean the fleece is from the outside, and you can remove small bits of vegetable matter like this. And then because this fleece, the locks, they stay together all right, but because it's very slippery, they kind of want to just slide past each other. So I had to be more delicate with laying this out than I have for other fleeces, which is fine. But if you start to feel, hi, if you start to feel overwhelmed because it's not quite unrolling nicely, or something's got twisted somewhere, just take a breath, go slow, maybe give it 10 minutes, come back to it later, get a friend. Sometimes working together with bigger fleeces, it just makes it so much easier, and you're less sweaty at the end. So just do your best to get it all laid out like this, and then you can really assess which parts of the fleece you want to use for various projects. And also, if you've got a fleece where there's a marking from the animal while it was out in the field, you know, oh, because that's blue, I need to either use that for a different project, like stuffing into little teddy bears or something, or cushions, or you can use it when dyeing, because if you're going to dye something blue or green or any kind of like cool color like that, you can just spin it into the yarn, and when you over dye it, it'll give you some nice variation, and there's also a possibility it'll just come out in the wash anyway. So don't take that as like a complete fault in the fleece, because sometimes if you see it, you can kind of use it to your advantage. But by rolling it out like this, you can see there's that you're going to have to deal with. So it's easier to do it, to do the planning stage now when you can see the full fleece. The other thing, you probably see me kind of grabbing little bits of it. You'll get these second cuts. Get as many out as you can now, because it makes it a lot easier, because you don't want to wash these if you can avoid it, because when you go to further processing steps, they just get in the way. They can add slubs and texture where you might not want it, so just get rid of those. They do sometimes end up on the top side of the lock, which is why I always like to take a look at that part first. There's also these tiny ends that sometimes crop up. There could be an occasional bit of fleece you just want to get rid of now. So this is a really well skirted fleece to begin with. So I'm probably not going to have to get rid of much. And some of these areas where it's slightly compacted, I might hold off getting rid of it until I can see if the wash removes some of that dirt and loosens some of the compaction, because it's still usable. Woo! You definitely want to get rid of these. So, bramble bushes. So just take a minute, go through your fleece from the top side. Pick out anything that you don't want to wash. Give it a real good once over. Ouch. This sheep got really close to a bramble bush. Probably blackberries, based on how the barbs of the little twigs look. So stuff like this you want to get rid of before the wash. Because what happens is, even if you're really delicate in the washing stage of your fleece, you still will get these further embedded. So take them out now when you see them. And then the other thing that you want to do is, if you want to partition your fleece, now is the time to do it. So because most of this fleece has a really similar consistency, so basically up until I'd say here, it's not quite perfect because I might have laid it out slightly skewed now that I'm looking at it. So it looks like this part of the fleece here is slightly more worn looking on the tips, and that might just be the animal has preferred to lay on one side rather than the other most of the time. So it might be more not quite cotted, where it feels kind of softened and rough at the same time. It's a completely different texture. It feels almost like it's been felted in the lock form, but it's not fully compacted the way that felt normally feels. But it's definitely a different texture than this bit over here, which is roughly the opposite side of that bit. So you don't necessarily have to do it in perfect sections. So if your section looks a little bit wonky, or if it's like really cherry picking your bits of the fleece, that's totally fine. So what I might do is have a bit of a diagonal for my split. So I'm just going to split it into two, where I've got the lower half of the fleece, so basically anywhere that's in the lower, that's in the hip region of this animal, including the stuff around the bum and lower back and the legs. That bit is, it's fine wool to use, but it's not as pretty and it's not as shiny. It's more fluffy, the locks are disaggregated, and so I would rather use that for something else. That will be perfect for bats because it will be soft and fluffy, have a good color, but I don't need the lock structure for anything. And so with that, I'm just going to kind of cut it down here in the bottom 1/3. But then this stuff here in the middle and towards the neck of the animal, this stuff is really shiny. The crimp is beautiful. There's a lot of versatility with this part of the fleece because you can keep it in lock form and literally just do lock spun. So whether you dye it or not, doesn't matter. You'll get a lot of beautiful texture, a lot of loft. It'll be very, very soft. And even though this one I think has that Shetland presentation, it will still make really pretty lock spun yarn. So there's that. But because this part is so consistent, I don't feel the need to break it up much further. However, if you were someone who really wanted the softest part of the fleece, which that's what this is, there's a really high crimp, high luster, it's noticeably soft. As long as you don't get into the chest part of it too much, where as the animal's eating it will like almost like dribble on itself. So if you don't get too low into sort of like the bib or like the lower chest as it goes into the belly area, as long as you're kind of really focused on the shoulders and neck part of the wool or of the fleece, you'll get some of the best wool. But I'm not really interested in that, so I'm just going to leave it as part of this second bit, which is probably about between 2/3 and maybe just over 2/3 of the fleece. So it's not going to be a perfect split, but I get a lot of really nice prime, or what I would call prime, out of this. So the next thing to do is flip this whole thing over to see the shorn end, because that's where a lot of these seconds will live. And those are all of these short bits that you don't want to wash into the fleece. Although I say that, and there's actually not much in the way of seconds, so this should be a really quick process. We've basically flipped the whole fleece over, and because this animal was probably quite densely covered, it's a very fine wool, so there will be nooks and crannies for you to check. Then definitely take the time to look for all of those bits and bobs you definitely don't want to wash. And at this point, because you have properly laid out the fleece, you know you're still looking at the bum down here and the neck up here. It's just belly up now. Whoop. Okay. So because it's belly up, this is where you're going to see all of the short bits of fiber. And it might be helpful to kind of give it a little bit of a shake once you've flipped it over, because I find that really helps to dislodge some of the small bits, and then I just pick them up off the surface. Now, when I first worked with a fleece, like a full wool fleece, it was a Cormeau. Not super expensive, so I don't think it was particularly high grade or anything. Wow, the sun has really come out. So I got really obsessed with picking every teeny tiny little bit out, and because it was coated, it had like the tips had broken off slightly, which can happen. So basically what happened is the very tip here would break off on some of them, and then they would kind of form these sweater balls. They would pill a little bit. And I wasn't quite sure if you were supposed to get rid of that. I knew I was going to card the whole thing, but I wasn't sure what I should do at which stage. So at this stage, I would say if you go 80-90% on tidying up the whole fleece, that is ideal. Don't try to go to 100%. If you go under 70%, there's more you will be picking out during your process stage. So some people don't mind doing it at that point because even when I'm carding bats, I will always sit there and pick out the bits that I don't want to card. So that could be seconds, that could be bits of vegetable matter. Sometimes I'm given fleeces to work with because the animals just need to be shorn, and then the people just need to get rid of the fleece rather than have to bury it or burn it, which is kind of a sad thing that happens, but it does. So sometimes I just need a break from fully tidying up the fleece. So as long as I've gotten all of the twigs out of there, then the occasional bug that has landed on the animal and died in the fleece, it happens. I don't really worry about getting them all out sometimes because during the wash they might come out, and this also depends on the fleece. Sometimes if I just take the fleece and wash it, a lot of vegetable matter comes out. Sometimes the bugs do, sometimes they end up staying, but you also need to balance what's going to be good for you, what the fleece is like. If you have a really tight fleece, definitely try to go that 90% if you can. Do it in small batches, ask a friend to come over, teach your partner how to do it. So as I was saying, just try and pick out as much of the annoying bits as you can, especially for the sort of finer fleeces or anything that's got a really tight lock structure. The crimp that's really, really close. Because if you don't, and then you wash it, it will be an absolute pain and nightmare to process it then afterwards, because it's had time to migrate, it's had time to cause more damage to your fleece. You might end up losing some of the wool because it's been so tightly wound around some sticks that you're going to rip it apart trying to get it out. So in the grand scheme of things, it's not a huge deal, but from my past experiences working with fleeces, I like to spend as much time as I feasibly can to get it as clean as I can, but I don't get too fussed by being a perfectionist. And for fleeces that I know the vegetable matter will come out really easily, so slightly coarser fleeces, anything where I'm not going to be fussed about the lock structure, I might go more like 70-80% clean or tidied up before I sit down to wash it. But don't take this as like it has to be 100% clean before I wash it. That's really the main takeaway. I just wanted to pop back in here to show off. So this is basically the amount that I have pulled off of the fleece, and I'd say overall the fleece was really clean to begin with, so either the animals really didn't get into too much mischief, or the shepherdess also spent some time really tidying up the fleeces beforehand. But that might not always happen, so one of the things to be mindful of is when a fleece hasn't been heavily skirted enough for a spinner and you get the tags, which is basically the poop. If you've got poop in your fleece, not only will you be able to smell it, but now is definitely the time to get rid of it, and just find a section along the locks and then rip it off, throw it away, don't even look at it. It's not worth it. This sun is really punishing. I don't know what I was thinking using the natural sunlight for this video. But it serves a purpose for when you're doing this kind of project. So now what I want to do is find a line to split so that I can release this bottom part from the top part. And all I'm going to do is find where the fleece I don't want to be using kind of starts. So that it's roughly about here. So all I'm going to do is just grab a tiny bit of it and pull it apart. And you can see how they are kind of just barely connected anyway. So I'm trying to grab the tips of the wool, and that means the shorn end gets dislodged. So this is the prime part that I'm going to be using for whatever. I'll probably end up keeping some just because it's so lovely, but I will definitely be turning it into products, bats, maybe hand spun. And then this part down here will also become bats because it's still really good wool. But I feel like I have less versatility with my choices for this stuff, so I want to separate it now. And you're basically looking for any kind of thin point, so that's a good spot. And so now I basically got the top separated from the bottom. So as I was saying, this is still really good wool. It's just slightly fluffier. The lock structure is also very different than the other bit. I'll show you here in a second. There's also this part of the fleece that I was describing earlier where it looks like the animal had laid on it. So the tips are slightly more broken and mangled than I would like. And you can see there with these bits, there is some lock structure you can see with the kinks, the way that it kind of sits together in a wave. It's just not as pronounced, and so it's a bit drier. It's not going to look as nice in a lock spun preparation. So when I dye locks and then sell them as locks, you have a lot of choice, and one of the things you can do is from the middle here, if you spin from just this, with the lock spun yarn, you can take the dyed lock and spin from this middle area. That way you get some of the lock structure maintained, so you would have this bit here sticking out, and then the shorn end that would be sticking out of your yarn, and it would look really pretty. But because this doesn't have a really solid lock structure and it's more crimpy than curly, it won't be bad at all as a multi-purpose yarn, because it feels soft and very, very nice for close to skin stuff, but it won't be quite as fine as the other part of the fleece. But I think you could pretty much make most things out of this wool. And so that is basically why I wanted to separate that part of the fleece. And I even missed a little bit here of moss. You get moss and fleeces here. Now this part of the fleece, you can probably already see from this angle, just the pronounced lock structure. So you can really see how it's got a very tight crimp. It's very close with its with the neighbors, right? Now this is the part of this fleece that most reminds me of Shetland. So all the Shetland fleeces I have worked with so far have looked like this. So I'm attributing this to the Shetland bloodline in this particular animal's fleece. But then if I show you this bit here, now that lock structure is so reminiscent of Blue-Faced Leicester. And my camera is actually having some difficulty focusing on it. So yeah, that is a really nice, beautiful lock. And if you didn't know about that other bit, you would think this is a Blue-Faced Leicester. It's also got a really nice long staple length. I don't do much freehand filming these days, ever since I got a nice tripod. But this lock is probably at least 4.5 inches unstretched. And if I were to show this to you and say, this is Blue-Faced Leicester, you'd probably believe me. So, yeah, this part of the fleece, even though we've got kind of the two different textures, so this one, which is definitely on the softer side than this crimpy side, I think they are sufficiently close enough where you'll be able to get a really nice mix of both, where this crimp can actually be a bit of a pain when you are spinning. And so I think the different structure, where'd that lock go? I think the different structure of the more Blue-Faced Leicester style locks, like this sort of crimp, will give it enough loft, but it will make it more manageable. My printer decided to turn on for a second to do some maintenance. So yeah, as I was saying, because this Blue-Faced Leicester, the lock structure here will make the Shetland, this part of it, easier to work with. This can be really, really crimpy and tight and difficult to comb out or card, and then when you're working with it, it's like really puffed up. I think together they will work really well, but if you wanted to do a project where you split this further, then I would split it based on the differences in these locks. So if I wanted something that had more of these Blue-Faced Leicester attributes, something more silky, and then I wanted something that was a bit more fluffy or soft, or something I could spin even finer, then I would further separate these, but of course you would get less overall. And then there are some lovely bits of colored wool in this mix, which is lovely and random. And you can see how it's just grown white and then gray on this lock. So this is a pretty substantial part of the fleece, and all I'm going to do now is bundle this separate to the other, and I could even use the same bag with like a piece of paper separating the two bundles, and I can write some notes on there if I have an idea about my project, or if I wanted to wash this in a very specific way where I maintained the lock structure more, I could put that on the piece of paper, so note to self. But at this stage you really want to get it separated, cleaned up, or tidied up as best as you can, and pick a day to do your washing. And I'll probably wash this in 2 to 3 batches, because even though I'm going to be washing it in the tub, there's a lot here and it feels very rich in lanolin. And so I want to make sure that I get it thoroughly clean, and if there is any bit of dirt, that I can get that out of it. during the washing stage rather than when I'm actually carding it. And then when it goes into storage, I'm going to literally do the same thing I do for all of my fleeces, which is I will store it with some kind of bug repellent, and it will be in a pillowcase, and I might even store the whole thing together because it's a relatively small fleece. But then I'll have everything ready to go for dyeing or carding or whatever I decide to do next. It's important to state at this point that if you see moth activity, you should probably consider it a lost cause. Now, this can happen to anybody, even if you spend a lot of time doing research like I have done in the past. It happened to me before I relaunched Expertly Dyed in the UK, and it was really upsetting. So I did all of my normal protocols. I contacted the shepherdess. I said I wanted to have samples of these fleeces, and then I worked with the samples. I really liked them, and then I went ahead and bought some of them. And I was opening up the box that had this beautiful mule fleece in it, and on the outside it looked perfect. It smelled fine, and then I unrolled it and I started to see the evidence of a moth infestation. And the second that I saw that, I immediately took it outside. Everything in the box. Yeah, you have to be very serious about moth control if you have fiber. Even if you are just doing stuff for yourself, it is an absolute devastating experience, and this is the one and only time it's ever happened to me. But if you see it, this is also the stage in which you're going to see it. Don't try to salvage it. Don't try to continue working on it. Take it somewhere that you can clean up everything. Now, I will say, if you have an occasional one-off bit and no other signs, there's no actual activity, so you don't see anything moving, flying around, then you might be able to salvage it. But unfortunately, and especially for this case for me, I had to just get rid of it. It was very upsetting. So whenever you do buy a fleece, even if it's from someone you know, if it's reputable, even if it's sort of like, I've done all the checks, before you really integrate it into your stash, get it out, look at it right away. Even if you don't have time to fully process it, like I won't be able to wash this probably for another week. I wanted to double check to make sure everything was clean, good, ready to go, and to help with the progress of processing this fleece. So sometimes just doing little bits at a time is really helpful. But if you see any kind of moth activity, try to separate it from everything else in your household. And also another benefit doing this outside, because a moth infestation is really serious, and I have seen too many people post online, what do I do? It has invaded so much of my stash. Do I keep looking? Should I just throw everything out? And sometimes it is a matter of you just need a clean start. And so whenever you're going to bring home a fleece, try to get it processed as soon as you can after purchasing, and to do it in such a way that you are being mindful of moths. Don't want anyone having tears over everything in their stash being absolutely ruined, and it would wreck me as a business. So I'm always very diligent, very careful. I'm always cleaning up after myself. Everything is in tight storage. I'm always checking. I'm always looking. I've got all of my fail-safes in place, and I've never had an infestation of my products. It was literally just this one fleece one time, and the second that I saw it, I was like, no, you don't get to live here. So yeah, just it's one of those conversation topics that we kind of have to have, because sometimes things happen, and you just it's an investment. You just want to make sure that you are maintaining your investment, and there's so much time, money, effort that goes into hand production of cloth or other kinds of fabric that you don't want it present at all. So definitely be mindful of it. So I was going to show you this whole fleece out on the blanket, but I don't really have time because I need to get that going if we're going to be eating before bedtime. But I wanted to show you just the difference in the lock structure and also the length. So this is from the, what I'm calling the prime of the other fleece, the first fleece, and then this is from the second fleece, so it's considerably longer. And because of its staple length, it's probably about 7 inches unstretched. Well, at least 7 inches, probably more like 8 inches unstretched. It's roughly double the length of the first one. So if this is 1 year's growth, I know that there's got to be some long wool characteristics in this. And so I'm going to go with probably Wensleydale because that's what it most reminds me of. I could be wrong, but it's significant, and it does kind of have this back and forth wave pattern that you would still see in Blueface Leicester. So I'm pretty sure this is going to make beautiful lock yarn. And so I will probably post pictures of this on my Instagram. There's even some lovely dark stuff in here. I'll show you. Oh, look at that. Beautiful dark, like charcoal gray with slight brown tips. So yeah, this is definitely going to be in maybe a photo format rather than video, because like I said, I don't have time now. But it's even got some of what I would consider like a curl structure rather than a crimp structure. And you can kind of see on locks like this one where it almost wants to form a ringlet here near the top. And even in the middle here, it kind of like, it's not just a back and forth zigzag wave like you would see with Blueface Leicester. This is definitely almost like a corkscrew type curl that's wanting to form but not quite. So this is going to be amazing once it's dyed as well. That shine definitely is coming through more so on this fleece than the first one. So because there's a lot more shine and the lock structure is more conducive to lock spinning, this is definitely one that when you are laying it out, take the extra time to make it look really, really nice. So when you lay out any kind of long wool or any kind of fleece that you want to maintain the lock structure of, take those extra 10, 20, 30 minutes to lay the fleece out very nice. And when you're separating the fleece from like into batches, so if you want to do smaller batches, you'll just separate smaller bits at a time. You definitely don't want to wash one of these kinds of fleeces in a big batch because it will pull on the locks just due to the weight of it. And so when you're moving it around, or if it's being lifted up out of a tub or a washing basin or something like that, it's going to pull at the lock structure, and so it's going to want to pull it apart. And if you want to maintain that lock structure, you can't come back to it. That's just not really how it works. I mean, speaking as a curly, once you've brushed this hair, it doesn't form back up. You basically have to get it re-wet all over again, and then even then the curls form differently. So basically you want to maintain these locks as best as you can. So you definitely want to do smaller batches at a time than you would with the first fleece that I showed you. And while you're working with them, you definitely want to make sure that you're separating it very gently and finding natural separation points where the locks are already kind of coming away from their neighbors. Pick that spot and separate it rather than try to be more precise if you can, just because you'll have more full complete locks at the other end. And then when it comes to washing, you might also choose to wash it more in a delicate way. So I'm going to refer you now back to my website where I've got pictures of me washing a merino fleece in a mesh bag. And I think I also did this when I was washing my alpaca fleece ages ago, about making alpaca rolags, I want to say. Anyway, I'll find it and post it in the description below so you can easily find that video. So yeah, so this fleece is going to be dealt with slightly differently than the first fleece I showed you. But especially if you're a beginner or if you wanted more specific detail about how to do it, then I hope that the first part of this video was most useful for you, and also a good refresher for anyone who hasn't worked with a fleece, like a full fleece, for a while, or they're trying to branch out into different breeds. This is useful for different breed studies as well. So if you buy a whole fleece, how do I work with it? And as always, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Post in the comments below and feel free to share this around onto various platforms to raise awareness and to let the YouTube algorithm know that this was a good video to watch. And I will see you in the next one. Bye!